Colleagues, and fellow courageous leaders, as we prepare to learn how we can ensure success is the only option for our children, please join me in welcoming Mr. Alan Blankstein.
Thank you.
What you want?
They said I danced, I had to do it, they dared me. Come on, one more time. We got one more chance at this. All little children in the school were mine. Now, what would I do to make that child succeed? And don't you think that if all the school's children were all of the staff's children, that they'd all do so much better? You think we'd be solving maybe 50 to 80% of our problem right there? Like Michael said, motivation. So really what I want to talk about today is how do we create an individual bond of that nature? How do we create a culture where it's not just me caring about all the kids, and then I'm out there all alone, all the other teachers are going home early, I'm staying after, I'm going to all the ball games, I'm calling all the parents, I'm the super teacher, I come to the Hope Conference, right? But where's everybody else? So how do we create a culture where we all agree that this is the kind of behavior that we're going to exhibit? And then how do we create structures to support that culture? And that's really what I wanted to talk with you about this morning. In particular, let me just tell you one last thing about me and Sarah and where I'm coming from. She's named after my grandmother, who's been more in my forefront for the longest period of my life. And that's because my grandmother came over from Eastern Europe when she was a child. She didn't do particularly well in school. She dropped out. She had 3 children. We've had ripple effects ever since. My uncle was on heroin for 20 years. I was in a group home. And so my interest has always been, how do we reach those kids in our schools? Because the other kids are easy. Sarah, she's going to sit in the front row. She'll clap your erasers for you. She's already read all the novels before she was ever born. Mom read it to her, right? But how do we help people like my grandmother, Sarah? And if we do that, and when we do that collectively, that's when we create places that are better for all of the kids, because those kids serve as canaries in the coal mine for us. If they drop off, there's a problem in the coal mine. Run or change it. So that's what we're really all about, organizationally and personally. I have an agenda here. It basically says that what I wanted to do is share with you how we're getting the successes that we get. We are currently working in districts from coast to coast. Connecticut, Canada, California. We're working in places overseas now. I'm meeting with the Ministry of Education again in a week to talk about exactly what we're going to do to help the entire nation build capacity. And I just basically want to share with you, boil it down to a few key points of success. What's making this work? I want to talk to you about all the challenges. It's not easy. Michael Fullen said that yesterday. We have lots of challenges. Share with you what they are. I think you'll recognize them as being real for yourself as well. And then strategies for overcoming them individually as a teacher, collectively as a learning community and a culture, and then those structures that'll support. Let me tell you a little bit about what happens when we go into a school or a district, and mostly it's districts now. There we go. We have 4 assumptions. The first one is that we believe that everyone's already working hard. You know, as Michael said yesterday, if they're not working hard, assume it's because of capacity. I mean, if they're not succeeding, assume it's because of skill, not will. In other words, they're trying as hard as they can. And that's what we found, and we are in the poorest districts as well as others in the nation. So whenever we go in, we rarely see a whole pack of teachers sitting around saying, I'm going to do a half-assed job today. I'm going to send half the kids to the office by noon, and maybe by 1 o'clock I can get it up to quarter-ass. We rarely see that, right? We see, instead, educators are the hardest working people in North America. And you guys deserve a round of applause for that. I want to say that that isn't true of all of our corporations and organizations, especially the monopolies. What I've seen in some of our for-profit corporations is something more like this. The boss says, "Why aren't you working?" The guy says, "Because I didn't see you coming." No, that's not the case with you. The second thing is that every school has excellent teachers. I have never been into a school that doesn't have an excellent teacher. Is anyone from one of those? You guys are going like this. Yeah, right here. This one. No, but seriously, everyone has excellent teachers. The opposite is often not the case, though. In other words, it's rare that we find a school where every single teacher is excellent. Usually there's a big disparity. So what I'm getting to here is that our third assumption is that it is an internal journey. Most of what you need is already there. It exists in the school or, as Michael was saying, in the school next door. And the problem with it in the school is that it's hard for teachers to admit that they have a problem, or for the principal to, or anybody else. So sometimes in our schools, if we can't get them to come out of the school and look at another school, which is possible often, we'll send them to a whole different district so that they can learn. And so these are some of the strategies you can use to kind of break down the barriers. But another one that's very important is to find the unifying purpose that gets people to be willing to step out of their classroom, watch other teachers, and be watched. And I'll give you some examples of unifying purpose. It doesn't really work to excite people, as Michael was saying, the motivation piece isn't there. If our unifying purpose is we're going to raise test scores 6% this year. Now, we have no child left untested, just like you do. But it's not a good rallying cry. So instead, I'll give you a couple of other examples. One, Rosa Smith, a superintendent we worked with who came from Columbus, Ohio. She's now out of there. She woke up one day, read the statistics, saw that 80% of the people incarcerated were functionally illiterate. 75% were people of color. She, being an African-American friend of mine, decided this was outrageous. Their role was no longer teaching math and science. It was saving lives. And for that district, that rallying cry worked. Another one of our districts outside of El Paso, Isleta, they decided when they had 50% ELL, 80% free and reduced lunch, that instead of stigmatizing Spanish, they were going to build on that in their mission and say every child will learn at least 2 languages, probably Spanish and English, and will be able to go to any academic institution of their choice.